He then noticed that the ship was beginning to list to one side. For legendsoffaith.org, I'm Rob Cutter. It was a full day of activity on that huge ship, and Colonel Gracie was exhausted. Earlier in the day, he spent time on the squash courts and swam in the ship's swimming pool. He then attended church and had an early lunch and spent the rest of the day reading and socializing. It was early in the evening after dinner he retired to his cabin. After 3 hours of restful sleep, Colonel Gracie was shaken awake by a jolt. He then realized the ship's engines had stopped. He quickly put on some clothes and ran to the ship's deck, where he noticed that the ship was listing. After a few minutes analyzing what was happening, he returned to his cabin to put on his life jacket. When he exited his room, he began helping as many people as he could to the decks of the Titanic. Colonel Gracie then began helping the passengers get into their lifeboats. As a first-class passenger, he could have secured himself a place, but as a man of integrity and deep conviction of faith, he observed the unwritten rule: women and children first. When the last lifeboat departed from the sinking ship, Colonel Gracie began to pray. He asked for God's protection and help, knowing that it would be impossible to survive the freezing waters without a lifeboat. When the ship was about to go under, Colonel Gracie jumped off the stern of the ship. The undertow, caused by the ship sinking, pulled the colonel down like a heavy brick tied around his ankle. Hundreds of people were caught in the suction of the sinking ship and drowned. Upon surfacing from the cold, dark depths of the Atlantic Ocean, he was just a few feet away from an overturned life raft. As he was struggling to swim, another man joined him, helping each other secure themselves to the raft. At around the same time, back in New York, the colonel's wife was having a sleepless night. She finally got up and started to pray for her husband's safety, not knowing that the Titanic had sunk. Back in the North Atlantic, the small number of men on top of the upturned life raft began to pray the Lord's Prayer. As they were floating in those cold waters, they would shift their feet constantly to keep the raft from capsizing. All the men clinging to the raft were finally rescued as the sea began to swell. Colonel Archibald Gracie's escape was not just one event. It was the sum of several small miracles, one after the other. The colonel and his wife testified after the event that they were certain that God had miraculously answered their prayers and saved Archie's life. They had been church-going Christians all their lives, and when faced with impending disaster, their first thought was to pray. For more stories like this and for ways to donate, visit us at legendsoffaith.org.